As I was on my way out here, maybe perhaps appropriately rural metaphors were coming into my head of a publisher in such an esteemed group of, first of all, I thought fox in the hen house, and then I thought perhaps more appropriately lamb to the slaughter. But if I wasn't intimidated enough by having to speak to such an esteemed body, listening to, well, having my wife and my mother present only added to my anxiety, and following Leif's brilliant and free-flowing and extremely engaging and intelligent talk has made me dry-mouthed with anxiety. Publishers speak a lot and speak a lot in public, but they tend to speak in sound bites, which is the nature of the business. So if you'll forgive me, I will read from this because it is a little longer than the normal book pitch, which I hate to tell you lasts about 45 seconds. So I was asked to talk relatively freely about the commercial imperatives in literary publishing and analyze some of the problems. And so that got me thinking about the industry as a whole. And what I thought I'd just start with is a sort of overview of the business. And it's always struck me as strange as how publishing distinguished itself from others by the fact that its principals and practitioners have always been the ones at the front of the queue to attack the reputation of the industry and talk down the current state and future prospects of the place where they work. Other industries or professions spend a considerable energy, thought, and time talking themselves up or trying to establish their right to be regarded as important and influential. And it's perhaps because of the absolute and unquestionably central position of the book in our culture and society that there is often a form within the industry of a mood of, at best, ambivalence or embarrassment to its relevance in the modern world, and at worst, a profound pessimism about the current state of the book world, and even more so, its future prospects. So whilst anyone who knows me would eagerly attest that I'm no sort of Huckleberry Finn naive optimist, I've never really subscribed to that view. Even though I could tell you that in 2014, there was zero growth in the UK publishing sector, and that print sales declined by 5% year on year, that the independent book retail sector has shrunk by a third in the last decade, and that last year the number of independent retail stores in the UK dropped below 1,000 members, and that the two primary book retailers left standing, Amazon and Waterstones, failed to make a profit on their trading activities again. But I could also tell you that the industry as a whole is by far the biggest of the creative industries. It may surprise you to learn, it certainly surprised me, living in this environment of self-flagellating pessimism, that at a global level, publishing is the biggest, and the biggest by some margin, of the industries involved in making a business out of creative content. It's 14% bigger than the movie and entertainment businesses, 41% bigger than the magazines and newspapers, and bigger than music and the vastly rising video game market combined. So this business of books is, and always has been, in a constant state of flux, of change and renewal, and this time is not really any different from any that had preceded it, certainly in my now embarrassingly long experience. Many threats, often viewed as terminal by industry's eager doommongers, have been and gone, and we are still here and still publishing some great books. We've vanquished the threat of CD-ROMs and DVDs. We've overcome the massive disruption created by the dismantling of the netbook agreement and the rise of the supermarkets. We have survived the consequences of the dramatic decline in the number and diversity of high street retailers. We continue to resist and prevail against the hegemonic power of the online retailer. We have managed the transition to the digital delivery of the printed word, and we've even learned to live with and indeed profit from the self-published work. So I hope in this I've demonstrated the scale and also the enduring resilience of the industry as a whole. Nevertheless, there is no question that its shape has changed enormously over recent years. And like all capitalist structures, it's subject to a Darwinian process of rise and fall, of growth and decline, mutation and change. But this attention, this festival's attention, this symposium's attention is on literature, the publishing of literary work of value and intellectual merit. So I turn my attention to that, and would just like to add that, of course, from an industry perspective, this is a very small part of that industry, albeit a part that attracts far more attention than its economic contribution justifies. But it's also an area of the publishing world where there's no question that the tectonic shifts have been as great or greater than anywhere else in the book publishing world, and that we in the English-speaking markets have been more challenged than in other parts of the world. In general trade publishing, where still much of what we consider literary work is born, it is the case that the big have got bigger. The recent merger of the Penguin Group to Random House has created an international conglomerate on an unprecedented scale. Annual revenues of $3.9 billion, nearly double the size of its nearest trade rival, Hachette Livre, over 10,000 employees, and over 250 individual imprints. Meanwhile, what was the middle ground, the sector regarded by many business analysts as the uncomfortable middle, has become ever wider and more sparsely populated. But it's this middle ground that is also where those engaged and interested in the literature of our times tend to look. It has traditionally been viewed as where literary talent is carefully mined and brought to the surface for our enjoyment, more than these businesses. Moreover, these businesses have often been regarded as something of a canary in that mine, indicating the health or otherwise of our literary culture. Those independent publishers, Faber and Faber, Granta, Canongate, Profile, John Murray, and others, seemed dedicated to pursuing only books of the highest literary quality. And what's more, they seem to be making the publishing of those books work pretty well from a business point of view too. Although I was, for a large part of my career, part of this band of brothers working both at Canongate and Granta, I should add that I've never entirely subscribed to the widely held view that these independent publishing houses were somehow the exclusive custodians of our literary culture. Although the ever bigger conglomerates muddy the waters by relying on output largely driven by market demand, they have in that process contributed enormously to the health and vibrancy of our literary culture. To deny Jonathan Cape, Secker and Warburg, Chatto and Windus, Fourth Estate, Penguin Press, and Picador's contribution to this sector is, to me, ridiculous. But by examining the critical changes in these smaller businesses, I think we can reveal the challenge for literary publishing as a whole and understand better the changes affected by the major shifts in the marketplace in recent years. After a period of growth and development and at times unbounded optimism, the last 5 or 10 years have been a sobering time. There have been several high-profile casualties. 2 significant departures from this sector in the last 12 months or so have been Quercus and Constable and Robinson, both acquired by Hachette, though it should be added that one was acquired because of its significant success, whilst the other for its enormous failure. Beyond these 2 high-profile losses, many significant contributors have struggled to maintain a healthy balance sheet and an exciting and diverse literary program. Atlantic Books went to the very edge of solvent trading. Faber and Faber last year saw an 18% drop in revenue and a decline in profits of over £2 million, resulting in a restructuring and a loss of a number of jobs. Bloomsbury's growth has been driven by its successful foray into academic publishing and cookbooks. Its literary output continues to struggle in this new marketplace. 2014 results show growth overall, whilst the adult sector saw a 10% decline in revenue and more high-profile departures from that house. But what's more, and I think that what's more significant, is all these businesses and others in this sector have been driven to publish outside their former core quality-led literary publishing strand and moved into more market-orientated general trade publishing to provide an economic ballast for their more financially marginal literary activity. Atlantic developed a genre publishing imprint called Corvus, Cannongate's commercial success in recent years have come more from TV tie-ins such as the Mighty Boosh, Carl Pilkington series, and Gogglebox, and YouTube phenomena such as Simon's Cat, and even Faber and Faber are not immune to this celebrity diversification. The yearly contribution of their TV tie-in in QI is a substantial part of their annual sales budget. They have had forays into celebrity publishing in the past, Flaminals by Ricky Gervais, a number of books by TV celebrity comedian Harry Hill, and this August sees them publish their first ever YouTuber tie-in, A Sprinkle of Glitter 2016 Diary, Have the Best Year of Your Life. The reasons for this shift in editorial policy from these companies to whom we looked for literary inspiration is a complicated one, but fundamentally rests on the economics of survival. Trade publishing has always been a financially perilous business, but the rise of the literary agent in the 1980s and 90s, which led to the sometimes exponential rise of author advance, coupled to the narrowing of the book market to really two national retailers and the consequent dramatic decline in publishers' trading margins. And you can see that publishing has been squeezed at both ends. As I'm sure everyone here knows, publishing has always used the profits of its few successes to compensate for its many losses and reinvest the excess by making new bets on fresh projects. As the publisher's share of the profits declined and the risk of the bets on future projects dramatically increased, the inevitable consequence was that the publishers became more risk-averse. At the same time as market forces squeezed the publishers' margins, the routes to market changed. From a pluralist world some years ago with 4 national high street chains, as well as many strong regional bookselling groups, we are left with one national high street book retailer, with one buyer for novels at least, whose taste determines which novels and short story collections will be bought and ranged in that store. Of course, everything is always available all the time in the other national book retailer, Amazon. But the problem there is that no one browses on Amazon or uncovers the unexpected. And what has been broken in this new retail landscape is what I've called in the past the chain of expertise that made new books and new talent discoverable. It was the editor or publisher who set in motion a chain reaction, firstly through colleagues and other departments in the publishing house, and then out into the wider world of critics and commentators, many of them experts in their field too, and finally into the hands of the bookseller, often the best read of the whole lot. And it was the bookseller's job to lead the reader, overwhelmed by the choice the book industry presents to them, to the good stuff. The massive decline in the circulation of newspapers, coupled with the decline in the space and I would say the quality of book reviews, and coupled with the huge decline in high street bookshelf space, means that really this chain no longer exists, or if it does, it lies in a severely traduced form. The consequence of this is that it is now immeasurably harder to get new and different books up and running. So consequently, mid-sized independent publishers are turning away from the new and alternative, formerly their bread and butter, and towards the tried and the tested. And whilst I do understand the financial imperatives that are driving this strategy, I also worry about the degree of risk that comes with it. The more they engage in the type of publishing that was formerly the preserve of their bigger conglomerate competitors, the more they lose their essential point of differentiation, a publishing program curated by literary taste, which in turn attracts new literary talent. Furthermore, whilst there are few safe bets in publishing, the financial risk of playing the conglomerate games is a high-stake one. The advances required for these types of books are enormous. The marketing budget required to drive awareness of it is of a size to match it. And you also have one shot at making these books like these a success. And that often means one giant printing and a further financial risk on top. And if that weren't enough, the channels that you have to put these books into are the most demanding and punishing that you can imagine. I now work in illustrated publishing, and I'm about to supply a major supermarket with a copy of an international bestseller that I'm lucky enough to have at the moment. And amongst the many other onerous undertakings, there's a stock guarantee clause that I've just signed And this states that whilst they're under no obligation to buy any more than the 3,300 copies that they've currently ordered, should they subsequently decide that this book has sold rather well and they would like some more, please, and they reorder, and I have sold out and I'm unable to supply, they will fine me for failure to supply. And that is the game that you end up playing when you're playing to make a book like Gogglebox or A Sparkle of Glitter a success. You have a tiny window where you have to push an enormous quantity of books out, supported by an enormous marketing budget, and keep your fingers crossed that that is the book that the public wants to buy. And for mid-sized publishers, that economic risk is a very, very big burden to carry. But beyond the considerable financial risks, one of the additional consequences of publishing celebrity books that arrive with a ready-made audience is that this dependency is influencing choices in their core literary field. I don't really have any data to support this, but it does seem to me that there's been a significant rise in literature, or what passes for literature, that comes with an author or an external agenda that provides that angle that will leverage the book to the attention of a wide audience. It seems to me that literary publishing houses are spending far more time discussing, and their audiences, I should add, are spending far more time discussing what a book is about than how a book is made. Content has triumphed over form. So, as an industry overview of UK publishing, at least, which is what I know best, the book publishing market is polarizing to the margins of the very big and small, and the widening middle ground has become and will continue to be very sparsely populated. On top of these changes of scale, the challenges of getting books discovered has led to a publishing conservatism that is reducing the biodiversity of the industry output. Now, whilst I said I wasn't going to present a negative portrayal, that all seems rather gloomy. However, what I've yet to address are the publishers at that polar opposite end of the scale from the $4 billion Penguin Random House conglomerate. The market forces that are driving the mid-sized publishers to compete with their big cousins for TV tie-ins and celebrity memoirs has left a gap that their smaller competitors are swiftly moving into. The very shifts in the retail marketplace that present the challenges to the mid-size and established quality independents provide opportunities for a new and exciting sector of publishing. The advances in print and digital technology and the shift of distribution channels to the everything store of Amazon has brought down the barriers of entry considerably over recent years. In the bad old days, you needed a print run of thousands and a sales team of at least 12 people in Vauxhall Cavaliers spread across the UK and countless other freelance agents across a sprawling global network of sales teams to even stand a chance of getting your book on sale, let alone prominently displayed in the marketplace. Today, you need nothing but a laptop and imagination to make your book readily available to the book reading public, not just in Britain, but across the world. As a consequence, for those engaged in reading and talking about and writing new literary work, I think today is the age of the micro-publisher. For my money, the source of the most interesting literary output in the UK is from publishing companies that employ between 1 and 10 people, who produce around 15 to 25 original works a year, and whose turnover is on or below that of about £2 million a year. These businesses continue to surprise and delight with wonderful curated lists filled with new talent, and what's more, they are thriving in today's marketplace. Alec Galenzi and his wife have set up not one but two successful literary houses, Hesperus Press and now Alma Books. Adam Freudenheim left his post as editor of Penguin Classics to run Pushkin Press. Turnover is skyrocketing as they continue their output of exciting, innovative and challenging novels, essays and memoirs. Both lists publish a high proportion of translated work, working in an area where their bigger competitors fear to tread, and highlighting the impoverished state of translation in this country compared to others, as Elif referenced at the end of her talk. But not only is the publishing of these micro-publishers exciting and different, the way that they're conducting business is too. Another tiny imprint and other stories is a not-for-profit community interest company, or KIC business. It has also set up a subscription model, which is building a community of readers around it, of which I will say more later. Down the road from here, in Cromer, you have Salt Publishing, run by husband and wife team Jen and Chris Hamilton Emery. In 2009, when the Arts Council slashed their funding and they were staring bankruptcy in the face, they launched and were saved by the Just One Book campaign, where they asked all the customers that they knew to buy just one book direct from their website in order to ensure their survival. This business effectively used crowdfunding to survive before crowdfunding had even been invented. 6 years on, they've restructured their business, reduced the new title output, and on an incredibly modest business model, produce some great books and make a reasonable living. John Mitchinson took the now established idea of crowdfunding and made it work with Unbound, with his company Unbound. He has more nascent projects than he can launch, and over 70% of all the projects launched end up being published, all funded by individual members of the public. And all these companies are solvent, successful, and producing work of great diversity and quality. And that quality is recognized in the most conventional manner. I should add, I'm not obsessed by the Man Booker Prize, and these companies have produced many wonderful works not even eligible for that prize, but I use it here as a shorthand endorsement for that rare combination of critical and commercial success. Unbound, mentioned earlier, published the Booker longlisted The Wake by Paul Kingsnorth, and other stories published the Booker shortlisted Swimming Home by Deborah Levy. Salt published Alison Moore's debut, The Lighthouse, also shortlisted for the Booker, and of course Norwich's own and truly tiny Gallybeggar Press published arguably the most exciting novel of recent years, the multi-award winning A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing. There are many others I could mention, but won't for fear of becoming repetitive. But hope these examples have demonstrated that whilst it has become increasingly challenging to grow above a certain level and maintain a certain literary profile, and that diluting that literary profile comes with many risks attached, it is also plain to see that the changes in the marketplace have enabled a vibrant and viable community of micro-publishers to grow and to flourish, and that the work that they produce has as much chance as anyone's to reach readers, and indeed, at the very least, the commercial playing field has never been more level. As a coda to these changes, it is ironic, I think, that these micro-publishers, mid-sized cousins, have been as guilty of perpetrating the crime of which they always accused their conglomerate neighbours, predating on their success, swooping down large checkbook in hand to the newly established and successful authors. Though not alone in this regard, Faber have perhaps been the most active, publishing the paperbacks of both Deborah Levy and Emer McBride's prize-winning novels, and signing up Paul Kingsnorth for parts 2 and 3 of what is now the Wake trilogy. Beyond the adventurousness of their commissioning, a key factor of the micro-publisher has been that they have been more adept at using technology and social media to their advantage. The buzzword in publishing, certainly in recent months, maybe recent years, has been community. Everyone is trying to build communities around books and authors, quite clearly to try and rebuild a different chain of expertise to improve discoverability lost through the changes described above. The challenge for the conglomerates, and more so the mid-sized independents, is that if your business publishing strategy is broad mass market, it's very hard to build a community around you. The demographic that is interested in both Gogglebox and Michel Faber is a pretty small one. If, however, your publishing strategy is as And Other Stories website states, we are a literary publishing house that works on the principle that great new books will be heard about and read thanks to the combined intelligence of a number of people, editors, readers, translators, critics, literary promoters, and academics. We hope we can be a home for such collaborations. Then building a community that supports all of your output becomes a more realistic ambition. The common thread that I hope has appeared in this talk is that the challenges facing publishing remain significant, but they always have been, in my lifetime at least. The present challenges are dwindling margins and how to get new and exciting talent discovered. The changes in the retail marketplace have created new ways beyond the bookshop of finding new books. It is no coincidence that the decline of the high street bookshop has coincided with the rise of the reading group and the book festival, though neither, in my opinion, provides a convincing answer. Nevertheless, I think that this new segment of micro-publishing has found solutions to these challenges better than their larger, better-resourced competitors, and these same changes in the marketplace are providing them a level of access to readers in a way that they have never enjoyed before. The biggest concern, to me at least, is the increasing polarity of the trade, both in books and companies, with the very big and the very small in relative rude health, whereas the mid-list book and the mid-list publisher are under greater pressure than ever. Having said that, it's unquestionably true that it is easier than ever, than it ever has been, to publish books and to have these books available to purchase by the widest possible audience. And I am an unreconstructed optimist and remain confident that publishers have the skills, intelligence and entrepreneurship to exploit these new possibilities, and that there now exists for the widest diversity of voices, from the most populist to the most esoteric, a place where they can be seen and purchased and read.